The bike lane removals in Toronto have sparked an ongoing and heated debate that intersects urban planning, traffic management, environmental concerns, and cycling safety. This issue began to intensify in late 2024 when Premier Doug Ford's provincial government announced plans to remove bike lanes on some of Toronto's most iconic streets, such as Bloor Street, Yonge Street, and University Avenue. These are high-profile areas that have become known for their growing cyclist infrastructure in recent years, particularly Bloor Street, where a protected bike lane was installed in 2020 to create a safer route for cyclists traveling the city's downtown core. The announcement came with an argument from Ford and the provincial government that these bike lanes were contributing to worsening traffic congestion. They claimed that these lanes were taking up valuable space that could be better utilized by motor vehicles, including emergency vehicles that were reportedly facing delays due to the narrowing of lanes. Supporters of the removal also pointed out that many drivers were unhappy with what they saw as an encroachment on roads that should be prioritized for vehicles rather than cyclists. For them, the bike lanes were seen as a luxury and a barrier to smoother traffic flow, especially during rush hours. As part of the provincial initiative, Ford introduced Bill 212, which would grant the province the authority to remove existing bike lanes and require municipalities to get provincial approval before they could implement new bike lanes that reduce car lanes. Bill 212 passed in November of 2024, sparking widespread concerns in Toronto about how the city's transportation infrastructure would be altered. This bill was seen as a major step backward for sustainable transportation initiatives, especially considering that Toronto has been actively working to improve its cycling infrastructure in recent years in an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote healthier forms of travel. Toronto City Council, which had previously supported the creation of these bike lanes, was quick to react to the news. They voiced their opposition, arguing that the removal of the bike lanes would have disastrous effects on traffic congestion. According to the city officials, these lanes, by being removed, would not only increase the number of cars on the road, but would also make Toronto's already busy streets more dangerous for cyclists. The city also estimated that the removal would cost around $48 million, a significant amount of money that would be spent on undoing what had already been built. Moreover, there were concerns about the environmental impact of encouraging more people to drive rather than cycling, which is a more sustainable option. Cycling advocates, such as a group called Cycle Toronto, was particularly vocal in their opposition. They quickly mobilized to organize protests and legal challenges to the removal of these bike lanes. They argued that the bike lanes were vital to ensuring cyclist safety in a city where cycling has become an increasingly popular mode of transportation. They also pointed out that Toronto was lagging behind other cities globally that were moving towards greater cycling infrastructure, not away from it. The advocates made it clear that this was not just about cyclists, but about fostering a more sustainable and livable city for everyone. The lawsuit they filed was an attempt to prevent the provincial government from enacting these removals and to protect the growing cycling community in the city. From a legal standpoint, the case is still ongoing as of January 2025, with Toronto's legal challenge to Bill 212 aiming to stop the bike lane removals in their tracks. The lawyers for the city and cycling advocates are arguing that the provincial government's decision violates the rights of citizens to have access to safe, active transportation infrastructure. They are citing both the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and various precedents for municipalities' rights to manage their own transportation systems. This controversy has not only divided politicians and city officials, but has also sparked a wider public debate. On one side, there are those who argue that removing bike lanes would provide immediate relief to traffic congestion, reduce delays for drivers and emergency vehicles, and restore streets to their primary function for cars. On the other side, critics argue that removing bike lanes is a step backwards for urban mobility and climate change efforts, and that there is a real need to invest in better infrastructure for cyclists, not dismantle it. The decision will likely shape the future of Toronto's transportation policies, and could have significant implications for cities across Canada. It is also important to consider the broader context of Toronto's transit and transportation network. Over the past few decades, the city has been increasingly focused on trying to reduce its dependence on cars. The implementation of bike lanes was part of this effort, and the city had already been working to integrate various modes of transport, including buses, subways, and cycling routes, to provide more sustainable options for getting around. The removal of these bike lanes, therefore, could undermine some of the progress made in creating a more balanced transportation ecosystem. Looking at the broader trend of transportation planning in Toronto, the controversy over bike lanes is also related to the challenges the city faces in addressing traffic congestion and the need for more efficient transport options. Many critics of the removal argue that the real solution to congestion lies in expanding public transit, improving infrastructure, and reducing car dependency. Toronto's transit network, including the TTC and upcoming projects like the Ontario Line, is undergoing significant changes, but for many it is still not enough to alleviate the daily gridlock that plagues the city. Furthermore, as public opinion continues to be divided, there is the added pressure of climate change, where cities around the world are pushing for greener solutions, such as bike-friendly streets, electric vehicles, and reduced fossil fuel emissions. The decision to remove bike lanes could also have an impact on Toronto's environmental goals, as it sends a signal that the city is not prioritizing sustainable forms of transportation. In conclusion, the debate over the bike lane removal in Toronto is not just about cyclists versus drivers. It is a critical decision and discussion about the future of the city's transportation infrastructure, the role of sustainable transit, and how cities across Canada will address growing concerns over climate change and traffic congestion. The final decision on this issue will not only affect cyclists, but could have ripple effects across the entire city, influencing how Toronto builds its transportation systems for generations to come. While the legal battle continues, it remains to be seen whether the public pressure, legal challenges, and strong advocacy from cycling groups can prevent the removal of these important bike lanes and keep Toronto on the path towards becoming a more bike-friendly and sustainable city. I hope that you liked the video. If so, please give it a like. If you're not subscribed and want to be notified of new videos that are released, please click on the Art Toronto button here. This is the video that I would recommend for you to watch next, and I'm sure that you're going to love it. Here's the playlist for all of the latest in transit news and views that you're going to find very informative and interesting. And finally, here is the latest video. Thanks for watching and happy transiting.